Hi, this is Cowboy Bill Watts. Be sure that you take full advantage of InYourHeadOnline.com. Fabulous site for wrestling memories, what's going on today, what's probably going to happen tomorrow. Tune it in and tell them Cowboy Bill Watts sent you.
Welcome to the show. We got Bill Watts, legendary promoter of MidSouth Wrestling and author of the new book, The Cowboy and the Cross. Welcome to In Your Head.
Well, thank you, Jay.
Sorry
what
about
are you talking about?
Premature start there.
Yeah. Well, is the big news you're talking about is something you can mention on there?
Yeah, the book is supposed to be, it's supposed to be in the stores. It just hasn't. None of them seem to have found it yet, but it's supposed to be in the stores. But this was a great article. Matter of fact, I think the Associated Press is getting ready to pick it up. I think I probably got a deal where I can. I got your.
The email.
I had a reply. Yeah, I've got your email. So let me go down and copy this thing.
Okay.
Right quick, and I'll fire it to you.
All right. Tell everybody right now they can visit CowboyBillWatts.com, and you can also buy the book at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and CrowbarPress.com.
Yeah, I don't know if Crowbar Press has actually got it or not. I know they're linking it. And I certainly hope that we want to encourage people to go to my website.
Yeah.
I'm not selling the book through the website, but I do want them to take a look at the website.
Yeah, CowboyBillWatts.com. I believe you mentioned that if, in like a press release, if someone buys a book, that if they send it to you, you can pay for the shipping back and forth, that you will autograph it?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. I'd be honored to.
Mm-hmm. Can they get your, is your address on the website to get that?
Yeah, they can email me if they're going to do that, and I think I put a shipping address on the website. I believe I did.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get to that thing to send to you right quick.
Yeah, I ordered the book last week from Amazon, but it didn't show up yet.
No, yeah, and I called Barnes and Noble here, and I called the other big one here, and neither one of them had books that they could lay their hands on,
Right. So when did you decide to write the book?
It's been, I guess, I'm so bad on time. A lot of people have been talking to me about writing a book, and I just didn't really want... Are we on the air now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't really want to write a book about wrestling because, really what I had to say about wrestling, I don't think would have made that much difference. It's, it's kind of like just another way for the writer to self-aggrandize himself, and so I didn't want that. I wanted something that if I was going to write it, had more value to it. And finally, a young man came to me about the project, Scott Williams, who's just turned out to be a great guy, and he understood that I wanted to be able to give something back at this point in my life, saying, if one person reads this book and sees, for all the reasons, whatever draws them to the book, but see that in life, there's a lot more to life than just now, and maybe you need to consider, is there life after this life, and where are you going to spend eternity? And the other thing is, how do you get to be the kind of person you are? What are these things that you install in your own personality? Like for me, anger has been a huge thing, and rebellion. And how did that all come about? And generally speaking, when we're young, as you look back, you can realize that you install these things for protection, either for keep from getting hurt, or maybe because you didn't feel you were loved enough, or maybe you didn't feel you measured up, either to the expectations of your parents or your teachers or your coaches or your siblings or whatever. And so you put these mechanisms in that were protective mechanisms, and really they're tremendously self-destructive. And if we don't even know we're there, sometimes we don't know why we act the way we do. And then a lot of times parents, they always want to take the kid and say, gee whiz, there's something wrong with my son or my daughter. And a lot of times the problem is the parents. So, I think in telling the story of my book with all the craziness and wildness, I think I focus on some bigger issues.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just a story of you in wrestling. It's how you became who you are.
Really, it is. I believe. I really think that it truly is. It's all about the crazy stuff that was in wrestling, but
right.
it does tell how I formed and how I became who I am.
Mm-hmm. You ever look back at some of the stuff that some of the crazy stuff maybe at the time was kind of like a nightmare to deal with, some of the guys, and now when you look back at it, it's a fun memory for you? Well,
yeah, I think that the whole thing has become a fond memory. yeah, you can look. You know, there's an old saying that you can, after you're out of the mud, the blood, and the beer, you can look back and laugh at it. And I value it. I mean, you know, I think when we were going through life at the pace we were going through, that everything was happening so fast, you oftentimes had relationships and friendships that you took for granted. And now you look back and see you were really blessed by that person being in your life. And now, so again, I believe in a sovereign God. I don't believe that anything happens by accident. I'm not saying I'm psychic, but I think things happen for a reason and a purpose that's bigger than I am. And I can look back. I fully believe the only reason I'm still here on earth is because God's not through with me, and that I have something that He can use to help reach out and touch people and maybe help people become better through it all. And so, yeah, all that stuff, that crazy stuff, I wish if I had my life to do over, there were a lot of things I could do differently, especially in the fact that I was given such a blessing in children, and the children that I sired and were my children, and I thought I did a decent job of raising them. But when you look back at the dysfunctionalness of our business and the dysfunctionalness of our the families in the wrestling business, it was a horrible thing for kids. And then the divorce and all the different things. And so if there was something I could do over, it would probably be in that area.
Yeah. Is wrestling business definitely hard to raise a family in?
Well, yeah. You were gone all the time, and you're living in a fantasy world. I mean, it's kind of like, how do you raise your child when you say, I don't want you to drink and drive? And he says, well, Dad, you got... And, well, I can handle it, son. My gosh, I can handle it. We go up and down the road drinking all the time. And then if I get stopped, all the cops know who I am anyway. I mean, what a horrible message. Because, you see, we want to tell our children what to do, but children are going to do what they see you do. And you're their hero. Mm-hmm. And especially as a father, you're supposed to be the guy that can fix everything. And all of a sudden, you're the guy that caused all the destruction. So, you know, it's a tough thing. It's tough on families. It was tough on wives. I mean, all the wives, you know, how stupid us guys were, take our wife occasionally to a match and think that she wouldn't look around and see that every other guy there is fornicating and chasing women, and I'm trying to tell her I'm the only one that's not. You know, I mean, it's pretty hard to maintain a trust factor in that industry, and the industry was not geared for families. It was a hedonistic, self-centered. You know, I didn't even understand the word relationship until I got out of pro sports, because when you're a pro athlete, generally everything is pretty well self-centered.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a caller here. Mm-hmm. Sorry, yeah. You have a question for Bill Watts?
Yeah, is he going to be appearing at any shows anytime soon?
I'm going to a deal here Sunday in Tulsa that's a benefit for Ricky Morton. I understand he got in a lot of trouble for child support, and I want to say one thing up front. I am totally supportive of our system in putting delinquent parents that don't pay their child support in jail. Mm-hmm. With that said, I really like Ricky Morton. He was a fabulous kid, a great kid. I have nothing but the highest respect for him. I think probably when he was making a lot of money, he got the child support set. And as things came unglued and he quit making the money, and possibly there were some other factors in his life that he didn't go back and get it readjusted, so he ended up with a lot of child support and arrears, and they put him in jail, and they ought to. But then the next thing is, how do you get a guy like that out of jail so he can start paying off that debt and get things back right? So they're having a benefit for him here in Tulsa, and it's my pleasure to go out there and just say hello and sign some autographs in support of Ricky Morton. So that's one event that I'm going to this Sunday. I don't have a bunch of events scheduled. I haven't been doing that. The book is apparently creating an awful lot of interest, and so maybe some things will happen from that. But I haven't looked at getting booked on a lot of shows. I went to a fan reunion in Tampa, Florida. Really enjoyed it. I saw wrestlers that some of them we'd ended up on fairly harsh feelings, and we could go up and hug each other and say hello. And I saw fans I was just blown away by the fans I met there, how loyal they are, how much it means to them, and what neat people. And the questions in the question and answer sessions were just fabulous. I don't think I ever had a bad question. I mean, every question that a fan asked showed that they loved the business, they cared about the business, and it was a well thought out question. I was really, really impressed. I would love to do a couple of more like that if it works out.
Yeah. I know Dr. Death is going to be, Steve Williams is going to be on that, the Ricky Morton benefit show.
Yeah, Doc emailed me again, because I think we're going to get together early and have lunch and get to spend some time together. Doc's one of my favorites. I love Doc. He's a great individual, and he's just come through probably the toughest challenge to health, we thought we were going to lose him. I mean, he was down smaller in body weight than he used to weigh in junior high.
Yeah.
Fighting that cancer, you know.
I read on his website, he said that he's back up in weight. I think he's up to like 240 or something, he said on his website.
Yeah, Doc's been a big kid forever.
Yeah.
You know, he was Dr. Death coming out of high school. That wasn't a name that he got in this business.
Right.
When I met him when he was an amateur, one of my dearest friends that wrestled with me in high school, and then we wrestled together in college, was his college coach. And when he called me to come down there and meet Doc was already Dr. Death. I mean, and Doc was just amazing. I got to watch him wrestle and play football at OU for 4 years, and I just used to sit there in awe because Doc's not what you call a great technician in the ring. What Doc had was a tremendous willpower that he was just going to go out and beat you. I mean, and I've seen him go out with guys that were a lot better technical athletes than Doc was, and he just breaks through them, and it was just fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
When you were in WWF, do you think there was anybody that they handled wrong or could have done better with?
You mean that 3 months I was there for Vince?
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of things being done at that time. Vince and I were really getting to know each other on a personal basis, and to tell you the truth, I was very impressed about a lot of things he did. I think he's a brilliant thinker. He's the kind of guy that's very easy for me to do booking with because he gets way out there where he wants to be, and then works backwards to plan on how to get there. I had nothing but, well, the talent really was good to me. I mean, they all showed great respect, and I got to know Bret Hart there, and because I'd never met Bret. I thought his brother, who's now deceased, was probably one of the nicest guys I've met. You know, there's some guys that were problems for other people. I don't think I had a problem there. I've always been a guy that got along pretty good with the problem guys. The big guy, Sid Vicious. A lot of people have criticized him. I want to tell you something. Sid Vicious, every time I was around him and trying to work with him, he gave me his all. I think a lot of people hadn't spent the time with Sid Vicious to develop him because I think they just let him go on his physique, and I don't think he trusted people. So, you know, the hardest thing to gain in any business that is so self-centered driven is trust, or if you can't have trust, you at least have to have respect. So I didn't have any bad talent problems and I was only there for 3 months.
Right. There's always a story about you and Shawn Michaels. The people said you wanted to fire him because he, I believe, he lost like a fight with some people, like outside a club.
You see, people blow stuff. You know, most people don't know what the hell really went on anyway about this thing. And then they blow it all up. I mean, so I get a kick out of one of my friends here locally that every time he sees me, he said, "Tell that story about you and Andre the Giant and Dick Murdoch when you were flying them in your plane into Lake Charles, Louisiana." I'll start telling. He said, "No, let me tell it. I can tell it better than you." And he tells the story, and I don't even recognize it. You know? So, Shawn Michaels and I never had a cross word there. Matter of fact, when I walked in and Shawn was with Vince, he said, "You know what he did? He fined me the first week I ever worked for him." And all I did is look at him. I said, "Did I have to fine you again?" He said, "No." I said, "It must have worked." And I thought he was one of the most talented individuals of all. Now, he didn't get in that fight while I was there. That fight happened after I was gone. Him and Davey Boy Smith. And all I said was this: when you were in my business, in the company I own, if you got in a fight in public, I didn't want you to get in a fight in public, but if you got in a fight in public and you got whipped, I fired you. Because if you were going to get out, and first of all, you better be in condition and you better be man enough to handle it. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If 3 wrestlers got whipped in that town, then there was some substance abuse involved, and those guys they were not physically ready to take on the task. Because 3 wrestlers, if they had 15 guys, 3 wrestlers should have held their own.
Right.
So I have no respect for 3 guys that get their butt whipped out in public because they're too inebriated or they're on some substance where they can't fight back. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know the situation. I've heard the rumors the same as you.
Right.
So my only comment was that they were working for me in Mid-South and they'd gone out in public and gotten whipped, they'd have got fired. So that's maybe where that story came from.
Right. You mentioned Shawn Michaels being a really talented guy. Usually in Mid-South, there was, usually had like the real big guys on top, like Dr. Death and stuff. But do you think a smaller guy could is all right to be on top of a promotion?
Well, I think you really didn't study Mid-South very closely. If you remember...
Oh, I know. It's Terry Taylor,
Rock and Roll
Express, yeah. Midnight Express.
The Midnight, Jimmy Cornette's Midnight Express.
Yeah.
Those were not big guys. I featured guys of all sizes. I never featured just one size guy. Danny Hodge was 220 pounds. So I
Eddie Gilbert.
I thought there had to be variety. I thought you had to have. Otherwise, if you were going to get all a bunch of big, burly muscle heads, you didn't have a great attraction. I even got so top-heavy one time with tough guys, my crowd went to rock bottom. And I'll never forget, I asked Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler to come over and just watch my TV and observe and see what they thought was wrong. Because one thing I understand, sometimes you can get so deep in the trees you can't see the forest. Mm-hmm. And they came over and they watched it, and afterward we had a meeting and they popped off something I won't say here on the air, but it was more like, where are all the young girls that do the sexual favors? And I thought, my gosh, you guys, I didn't bring you over here for that. I brought you over here to help me. I thought, and they were laughing and they kept asking me, and I said, what are you saying? They said, what we're saying is, there's not any of them in the audience. You have people here because you got all these tough guys. You don't have any young, good-looking, sexy guys on your card. And I'm going to tell you, they got my attention. And right after that is when I went over there in Memphis, and Jerry said, let's trade some talent. And he begged me to take the Rock and Roll Express, who were on the preliminary match. And then Jimmy Cornette was he managed 4 or 5 matches that night, was not featured. Jimmy Hart was his feature manager. Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey were not even a team. And so I got all these guys. Mm-hmm. They were just phenomenal. And I also got Magnum TA and started trying to create make him wear leather. And we started packaging some guys, and we studied our demographics. And we saw we had a big hole. We had a lot of males, but we didn't have the young people. And one thing you understand is where the good-looking girls are, the guys are going to be. So you want your crowd to have a total demographic.
Right.
And when we did that, it exploded our business. So, but I always maintained all-size guys. I never went for went where I had just all big, burly guys because you were really limited. You had to have speed. You had to have excitement. And so if you really looked at the talent we built and the talent we used, we had all kinds. You're just remembering Dr. Death or Hacksaw Jim Duggan or some of those guys because they were standout guys. But Ted DiBiase wasn't huge. Yeah. Paul Orndorff was built like a brick house, but he wasn't huge. Mm-hmm. And like you just mentioned, Eddie Gilbert, Michael Hayes. If you recall, we even put Buddy Roberts in with Hayes and Gordy, and that's what really blew the doors off of that tag team is when we put a guy in there that could take all the bumps.
Yeah.
And we made Michael come out of the ring and be a manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was also the commentator.
Well, that was later on.
Yeah.
That was much later.
Yeah. Do you think that hurts wrestling, though, now that there's not a lot of different territories, so guys can't, go from one place to another, freshen up their character?
Vince and I have had this conversation. I said, it's one of the stupidest things he did, and you got to realize here's a guy that has made millions and millions and millions, but was kill out all the competition because I don't care if you have chocolate cake, you don't want to eat it every week. So where do you get the new talent? And I'd already addressed that situation for a short time when I was at WCW, where we created towns that were close by because we had to have talent get out there and get experience. In the old days, when you had the different areas, you had every one of those areas was a training ground. That's where your new talent came up. Well, look how stagnant the talent is. I mean, you got guys when Ric Flair and them can hang on when they ought to be retired and home fishing. And Ric Flair's an awesome guy, but I mean that's telling you your talent is stagnant. And I mean they've still got Undertaker, who's an awesome guy. But I mean look how long he's been there. So pretty soon your talent is so stagnant. Why? Where do you bring up the talent? You can't see what Vince does. He creates a gimmick and gives them the name and the gimmick before he even finds out if they can carry it.
They have the Divas search.
Huh?
They have the Divas search.
Well, whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but they give a guy a gimmick before they know whether he can handle it. And so it's kind of reminded me of a guy used to write in and say, I got 6 championship belts and 8 robes, and I want to come in and be your champion. And you didn't even know who he was. You know, you can care less. You really want to know who the guy is and whether the guy can back up what he says. And so yeah, I think it's hurt the business. And I think even though they had the pay-per-view audience, I think it's hurt the towns. I mean, the one thing is when wrestling was running in cities every single night, there was a lot of people that were in the industry. And when you hear these fans talk, they don't like the new industry better because it's kind of detached from them.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's in a lot of trouble, too, because now he's the only guy. See, even Vince thrives on competition.
Oh,
now
yeah.
that he has no competition, is his product better, or has it kind of gone downhill? From everybody tells me it's kind of gone downhill lately.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, during the Monday Night Wars is, when it was really hot, when it was both, WCW and WWE was really big.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think like you saying about the towns, like the house shows, do you think they're doing bad, too, because they have so many big matches on free TV?
No, because we had
yeah.
I was the guy that pioneered putting a lot of main eventers.
Yeah.
That just makes it exciting. No, that's not it. I mean, it's really a simple formula. It's hard to keep up, but it's a simple formula that you got to have what the people want to see, or else they're not going to be there. It's kind of like the old-fashioned promoter that they tell the story about back down south, and he said, well, how would you all like to see Antonina rocking next week? And the crowd booed him. He said, well, by gosh, you're going to see him anyway. I mean, let's face it. You got a mirror out there that tells you how well your business is, and that's called the box office. Mm-hmm. And so if your box office is flat, I don't care how you mix it, you don't have what they want to see. And they've hashed and rehashed with every one of those stars they've got. And again, it's called stagnant. It's stagnant. So that's why when they finally find somebody new or somebody gets in and gets hot, it can spark the whole thing. Well, in the old days, you could trade talent with somebody, or you could get a new guy in. And he wasn't being exposed. Today, every guy that's in the business that is of any caliber, he's on television every single week. It gets old.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a good thing that kayfabe is dead?
Well, let me just throw this to you, and that's for you all to decide. But it's kind of like my wife wanted me to go see Titanic, the movie, and I said, "What the heck do I want to go see that for? I know the ending." The boat sank.
Yeah.
So with me, I think the mystery of the business was one of its tremendous appeals. I don't think that if you'd have taken an interview even in our heyday with the press and they'd have isolated, say, 10 fans at ringside and asked them, do you think this is 100% legitimate? I don't think maybe one fan, if any fan, would finally say, yes, it was. But then they'd say, well, what about that match with Dick Murdoch and Killer Carl Cox? Well, by gosh, those guys, they're mad at each other. And you realize that when I made Ron Simmons the world's champion at WCW in Baltimore, which is a tough market, the people in the audience were crying because they were so caught off guard by what we were doing that it excited them. And all I'm saying is, even in back, I'll never forget one time Killer Kowalski and I, who were great friends, he mentored me a lot when I went back east the first time, and the only time I went back there to wrestle. And we got into a deal in a town in Pennsylvania, and Jim Dillon was one of the referees. He was a commission referee. And we fooled the wrestlers in the dressing room and the referees and everybody else. They thought Killer and I got mad at each other and got in a fight. And we snuck away from the arena and then rode home together and laughed all the way home. But they really thought that he and I had gotten in a fight where the dressing room took sides and this thing, it was unbelievable. So what I'm saying to you is, if guys have great ability, that they have the ability to capture the attention and the emotion of the people. I don't think any of the guys that are in the modern era would know what it is to go to a town where the people believed what they were doing anyway. How many times have you seen the crowd really mad in the last 5 years? Have you ever had a riot because the crowd is so damn mad about what happened in the match? Hell no, because they know it's a showbiz. So they don't get mad. They just holler and scream because they're part of the show. Well, in my era, the people believed in what you did. So you sometimes had to fight all the way to the ring and all the way back. And sometimes you had a riot, and you had a lot of emotion. Well, then tell me which, you've got a bigger vehicle because of the thing that changed was the pay-per-view arena and the merchandising. But you don't have the fans that are near as close or as near as caught up because everybody out there thinks they already know what they're going to do and who's going to do it anyway. So to make a long story short, no, I didn't go see Titanic. I knew the boat sank. John Wayne didn't kill the Indians, but at the end of the movie, he didn't put his arm around them and ride off in the sunset. It looked like they had a fight, didn't it?
Right.
So if that helps, I don't know if that helps your answer or not. I don't think you can ever change it or take it back there. Why is UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship in the Octagon getting so hot?
It's real.
There you go. You think people go to NASCAR to see the cars go around the circle? They go to hope to see somebody hit the wall.
Right.
Right on.
Do you still follow wrestling?
No. And isn't it amazing, though? Every now and then I'll look, and you can still see. Once you were where I was, you can look at it and see. That's why I don't frustrate myself with it, because otherwise I'd look at it and be a critic, and I don't want to critique it because I'm not going to get involved.
Right. Mm-hmm. When you do is there anybody that you have seen recently that you enjoyed to see? Wrestle?
I haven't seen anybody recently. So
I
wouldn't know. I haven't watched a match, and I don't know when. When I decided that last time that I was out of it, I was out of it. Again, for the level I was at, why would I want to frustrate myself? It'd be kind of like if you were an alcoholic. You think it's going to do you any good to go smell the beer?
Right. Go hang out in the bar.
Well, so I finally realized that the life that I wanted was no longer in wrestling, that I had changed my life, and that when I went back to wrestling, all the things I was trying to get out of my life would come back into my life, and I didn't want it. I wanted a real peace in my life. I wanted to have something that was of more value, and it didn't require me whipping the world. It didn't require me being on that treadmill that I thought I had to go take everything and everybody. So it's been a slow transition, and I'm not saying it's been easy, but I'm at a different place in life that I now think, it's like one of my friends said, well, you could always talk, and I said, yeah, but now I hope that what I have to say has some value, and I mean lasting value. I don't mean just momentary value.
Right. When you said before, you went to a couple of fan fests, you ever think about doing a MidSouth Fan Fest?
Oh, not really. There's a guy here in town, Pete McGuire, who used to do a little what we used to call outlaw wrestling after I was out, and he came out and met me, and we've become just great friends. And he's got some ideas, and he and I'm starting to entertain doing some public speaking. As a matter of fact, I'm booked, I think, to speak in front of the Tulsa Rotary, which is the 10th largest Rotary, I think, in the United States in March. And and so I don't know. There may be a couple of things like that we might do for fun, but we haven't really messed with it at this point yet. Just kind of seeing where things are going, and I don't know what I want to do as far as wrestling. I love the sport. I love when I go back and have the memories, and I love seeing the fans, and I'm very, very proud of what I did in the business. But I don't know that I want to be a part of an active thing. I'm not going to be a part of anything active that's promoting it ongoing. And generally at these fan things, I'm just blown away that people want to see 50, 55, 60-year-old men get in the ring and work.
Right.
They asked me at Tampa, I was going to go to the matches. I said, no, most of them wouldn't watch them in their heyday, so why the hell would I watch them when they're this old? No, I was just being funny.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, the bottom line is, I never watched wrestling before I was in wrestling as a fan.
Uh-huh.
When you wrestled in college and high school, there wasn't much you wanted to watch about pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And then when I got in it, I got caught up in the tremendous ability that the guys on top had, not only as athletes, but as great psychologists, and that they were actually like individual movie directors. I get so tickled when all these people think these movie stars are so fantastic. How come the same star that can get an Oscar can lay an egg? You see, it's not about the star then, is it? It's the director and the writer and the producer that take all these ingredients, kind of like an old wrestling promoter, and put them together to have a box office success. And then generally you see when the star gets to be such a big pig head, or melon head as I used to call them, that's when their heads outgrow their bodies, they go and do a movie and it flops. Well, that was the same star, but only somehow because they have also control everything on television that gives them all the glory, like the Oscars, the Emmys. They keep on. Pretty soon you're going to have back-to-back awards on people coming out of movies, and look how they're influencing our society, which is absolutely the worst thing you could ever see, because what are their ethics and morals? Certainly Hollywood's never been a bastion for anything ethically or morally. Mm-hmm. And that's what's influencing our children. Kind of scary.
Yeah. Would you let your kids watch wrestling now? If they were young?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think I would if they were my children. It depends on what age they were. I think once they get up in high school, you don't have a
right.
If they pretty well want, but I would not encourage it. No, why would I? Let me ask you this. Let me turn it around on you.
Okay.
Tell me 10 positive things in pro wrestling, either morally or ethically, that you would want your child to learn from.
Well, it used to be, the good would conquer
evil. No, let's
evil.
don't go to used to be. We're talking.
Yeah, it's a little different now.
Let's talk about right. Or tell me, if you wanted your child morally and ethically to respect God, family, and country, the opposite sex, in all races, tell me how wrestling helps you do that.
Well, I don't think it would. If you just watch it for mindless entertainment, I think.
But you see, mindless entertainment even affects the watcher, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They always want to tell you that porn and all these things don't affect anybody, that violence doesn't affect anybody. That's baloney. That's complete baloney. Because you know yourself, you're a fan, you get excited. If you watch porn, you get excited. If you watch violence, you get excited. Some way you get excited. You may show it different ways, but it darn sure, if it didn't affect you, you wouldn't watch it, would you?
Right. You get caught up in it.
So then would you want to teach your child to respect you as a parent, to respect authority, to respect God, country, nation, and the opposite sex? Would you advocate they watch wrestling a lot?
No. No.
So mindless entertainment is a very dangerous thing, isn't it?
No, it can be.
It's not mindless. See, one thing I understood about wrestling, you could take a guy that was a mediocre guy, if you put him on television every week and put him over and told everybody how great it was, pretty soon they start believing it because you had a 1-hour program-length commercial. You could influence people's thoughts to believe what you wanted them to believe. Well, then somebody's putting something in your head, aren't they?
You have a question from the message board?
Casino Man, he wants to know what you thought of Herb Abrams' UWF.
Who?
Casino Man, it's a message board question.
Oh, no, he wanted to know about Herb. I think it was like in the early 90s or late 80s. There was another UWF. It was run by Herb Abrams.
I have no idea. I didn't know him. I know him.
It was even, I believe they had a pay-per-view. They were on TV just for a little while, like a couple of years, and they had one pay-per-view.
What? You just heard me say I didn't watch it. So.
Yeah, I'm just trying to explain.
I don't even know who Herb Abrams is.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I just don't.
No problem.
I'm not putting him down. I just don't.
Yeah, that's no problem. You have another one? Another question?
The Flea, he asked who was your favorite guy to book, favorite and least favorite.
Oh, I didn't have a favorite. I don't think, I think by the time you went through as long as I did, I was 25 years in the business. You had a lot of people that you had, that you were around. It's funny, some of the guys who were the biggest problems, emotionally sometimes, as long as they gave her 100% in the ring, I could deal. I didn't have to like them because I wasn't living with them. But, so I don't know that I had a favorite. I think at different times I had, if you wanted to go down, let's say, for instance, when I was in New York, Bruno Sammartino, what a awesome person, awesome guy. I mean, he was a guy of integrity and principle. And Killer Kowalski, Gorilla Monsoon, even at Fred Blassie. I love Fred Blassie. I like John Tolis. There were so many great guys. So in each area you went into, when I was in California, Ray Stevens was at his very pinnacle. And I thought he was one of the greatest talents I'd ever seen. Pat Patterson was learned enough from Ray Stevens to carry him the rest of his career. Kenji Shibuya, they're all different guys. The promoter, Roy Shires, I didn't realize I was studying these people. I was absorbing them. Then when I went for Vern Gagne was a master, great athlete, had certain qualities that were just awesome. And, of course, Larry Hennig and Harley Race. Harley Race was up there at Hennig and Race were a team. That was a great team because they were such opposites. And look what Harley Race did later on, becoming the world's champion. And Crusher Lazowski, I learned so much from Crusher Lazowski and Mad Dog Vachon. And then and so each place you went, you learned, and part of that rubbed off on you, and part of that became your cumulative thing. Then when I met Eddie Graham was the epitome of me finishing what I call my education, or jokingly we used to say my PhD in wrestling, because Eddie Graham was one of the deepest thinkers and was so challenging and so much fun to be around. We just really fit each other. So you get in it with, and then you talk about Dick Murdoch, what a charge he was. Dusty Rhodes, I mean, Dusty, when we made him got him to the point where he truly was the American Dream, I'll never forget that day. Goose pimples broke out on my arm, and I love Dusty. He's an awesome piece of talent, and yet at times he was very difficult because of his own ego. But heck, we all had the egos. Let me tell you, it's kind of like if you didn't have an ego, you wouldn't be much value in the business anyway.
Right.
It was just how you controlled your ego, and all I cared about was that, first of all, that if you gave me your word that I could count on it, that I could count on you showing up for your booking on time, and I could count on you giving 100% in the ring. The rest of it we could work out, and if we couldn't work it out, you were certainly welcome to leave. And it was that simple. I like Frank Goodish, and what happened to him was horrible. Yet he brought that on himself because his word became no good. He was hijacking people after agreeing to certain things. It's just, isn't it terrible that in Puerto Rico they took it to that extreme. Stan Hansen, I thought, was a great one. So I was so blessed to be around some great guys. Jack Briscoe, Dory Funk, Jr. Terry's a little bit different. Terry was more of a clown type character.
Yeah.
But Terry still, in certain matches, in the gimmick matches, Terry had no equal. He was awesome. So I mean, I had a lot of fun. There was challenges anytime you're trying to juggle talent as a promoter. You're trying to keep them happy and also make money with them, and that's not an easy thing to do, because every guy thinks he ought to be the main event no matter what and make all the money, whether he earned it or not. Ernie Ladd was one of the absolute best I ever dealt with on every level, and he was so brilliant. I had so underestimated how sharp he was. Ernie Ladd taught me so much and became such a close. Junkyard Dog was a dream to book. A dream to book.
We have a caller here. Who is this?
That's the Fleet.
You're on online with Bill Watts. You have a question?
First of all, I just want to tell Bill Watts that I have the utmost respect for him, and I think he's always done a fabulous job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to know, like, what your favorite time of like booking was. What was your favorite area, and like what was going on during the time?
Well, again, I think it's kind of hard to pin it down. Once I got to a certain place, naturally, when I came back home from Florida and took it to my own company, when Leroy and I just couldn't operate together anymore, and bought Vernon Fritz out and everything, and that process, that was a very exciting time. But before that, Eddie Graham, the period of time I spent around Eddie Graham and the war, what they call the war in Georgia, and I learned so much in that whole concept that that was very exciting, because again, anytime you're being challenged, I think when you're not in a comfort zone where you're really being challenged and having to do things, that's an exciting time. So but I think every place I worked, that there was something in that era or in that time, or else I wouldn't have stayed. I just was one that would not have stayed anywhere that I wasn't challenged. As a matter of fact, when I got to a point where I wasn't challenged, that's when I always got in trouble, because I get very bored.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
You have another question?
Well, I just wanted to know.
I just didn't have a better answer.
No, that's all right.
That was a great answer. When your son was at Louisville, and I always thought that he was going to be like the next star quarterback coming out of college. I really did. I thought he had all the physical tools. Mm-hmm. And was he ever drafted? Did he play at all in the NFL?
No, he did.
Oh,
Eric, basically speaking, it was a very unusual situation. Eric had a lot of ability, and Schnellenberger was on the way to somewhere and ran into Jim Ross, and Jim Ross like everything Jim Ross does, whatever he does, he's totally into it. Jim Ross was totally into football, too, and they got to talking, and he got to telling him about Eric. And Snellenberger kind of thought it was fate and decided he'd swing through and talk to me and Eric and see what was happening. And we were trying to get Eric a place to go that fit Eric's skills. Eric his skills were throwing the ball. He wasn't real mobile. He was a pocket passer.
Right,
and so
right.
Howard said that night when he was recruiting him, he said, I don't think he has everything to put together to be my quarterback, but he's got so many things that I want to give it a try. So Eric went there with that, and you got to realize then he got there, and there was a great quarterback there, and then Browning Nagel transferred in from West Virginia, and Browning Nagel became a number 1 draft pick, and then they had the Brom kid, who later became a number 1 draft pick. So Eric he was right on the verge, but he was not that breakthrough quarterback, and yet he still got to play a whole year and be a starter, and he got his degree. But no, Eric didn't have enough of what they were looking for them to give him a shot in the NFL. So that's just the way life goes. That's a whole different factory there. I mean, you really got to have something, or like they said, sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good either.
All right, thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks for calling in.
Well, okay, bye-bye.
Speaking of Jim Ross, do you think where would you place him on like the best commentators of all time?
Well, I think at one time that Jim is a great student. I'm going to say one thing. Jim Ross is a brilliant guy. I hired him right out of college practically, but he went through a lot, and he learned a lot. I think he did refereeing. He did everything. So, when you came into my system, you had to go through you had to earn your way. And Jim earned his way and became my trusted man, right-hand man. And Jim's paid a huge price by being my friend, because every place he's tried to get me into when I've blown my stack or something, Jim's been the one that's paid the price, and sometimes so unfairly. But Jim became one of the very best commentators. He tried to pattern himself after Gordon Soley. One thing he understood, and I think that a lot of people now can really appreciate Gordon Soley, and I learned this from Eddie. This is another thing I learned from Eddie Graham, just to show you how Eddie taught, is that I found out when I was booking Florida that, I was really busy in just doing all the day-to-day booking and the things like that. So I really realized by then that I could get over just as well talking on television as to take up the time wrestling, and because by that time I realized that people are really more interested in your personality, that they'd seen everybody wrestle a jillion ways. And I found that out from watching wrestling that Ed Francis was doing in Hawaii, he and Lord Blair's, when they had an hour and a half wrestling show and only put 2 matches on it. And it just blew me away, their ratings and everything else. And it was all due to the fact that the guys got to talk a lot, and they were characters, and people were more interested in their character than in their wrestling. So I knew that. So anyway, and when I was getting over in Florida, when I'd gone down there to be the booker and I owned part of the office, I got in a habit of walking on the show with Gordon as our host, and I would start overriding Gordon, and I would start talking down to Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie called me, and Eddie was so smooth. When he'd call you, you never knew, first of all, what he was calling you. He'd always do some small talk, and then he'd finally get around to why he really called you. And he did that typically again with me. He called, and we talked, and then finally he said, I was just thinking. He said, what if you got to go be on the Johnny Carson show? And you guys remember Johnny Carson was the biggest name in entertainment at that time.
Right.
This was in about 74. And he said, and then you got on Johnny Carson's show and you insulted him, and you put him down, and you took over his show, and you didn't treat him with any respect. Do you think you'd ever get invited back to the Johnny Carson show? And I said, why, hell no, you wouldn't. And he said, well, Gordon, we own the business. I mean, Gordon works for the office. But Gordon Soley, to the people, Gordon Soley is the voice of championship wrestling, or Florida championship wrestling. And so the only credibility he has is as our commentator. Then if you come out on the show and you start putting Gordon down, you're killing any credibility he has. And you're also making the promotion look foolish because they're tolerating it. And did you realize that I realized that he was so right, and so you never saw anybody ever put my commentator down nor did I ever put Gordon Soley down again, because if he didn't have status on the show, then we had no status as a promotion. What Jim Ross then learned also from that, and another thing is that no commentator I ever had thought he was more important than the wrestlers in the ring. Because you see, a commentator can't put a fanny over 17 inches.
Right.
The people come to see the wrestler. They do not come to see the commentator. So any commentator that I had that ever thought that he was more important than the wrestlers and didn't get the message that everything was featured on the wrestlers, and he would become a star anyway just because of the association, they weren't going to be around me very long. And Jim Ross understood that too. So Jim Ross picked up on all those things and understood that's how it was going to be, and he learned it, and he believed it, and that's the way it was. And so, like I say, we learned I learned that from Eddie Graham and dealing with Gordon Soley. So I think Jim Ross became, at one point, I don't know that anybody could be what Gordon Soley was. Gordon had his own unique style, but Jim Ross was right there in the hunt as one of the absolute very best. Boyd Pierce was a very loyal guy for me that I needed at the time that I used Boyd. But then there came a time when I had to let Boyd go, which was very heart-rending because Boyd loved wrestling. He was wealthy. He didn't have to do the wrestling because he needed the money. He loved it, and he loved being Boyd Pierce. But when we went nationwide, I couldn't use him anymore because the people that were syndicating our show, it sounded too regional. So we had to make some changes. So you learn from each thing. But I thought Jim Ross is as good. Gordon Soley was certainly good. I think the guy out of Memphis, Tennessee had to be good. I just wasn't around him that much. But then there were some other guys that I thought that weren't very good. And, but I didn't use them very much.
Right. I just want to bring up something that's kind of big news in wrestling lately is they're starting to do talk about steroid testing. I just want to know if you thought that was...
They're talking about...
They're testing for steroids.
Who is?
WWE.
Yeah, right. Oh, my golly. Yeah, I'd talk about it, too. Isn't it amazing? When I was back there for Vince that 3 months, he was dead serious about having a clean organization.
Right.
And he really did legitimate testing. As a matter of fact, when I went to WCW, and Turner wanted it cleaned up. He wanted to have a clean organization because he felt being the next god of our world,
right.
Turner, that he had to have a clean organization. So we built a program for randomly testing, and we tested everybody. I had 5 top guys positive, and I was going to use that for a couple of reasons. I was going to use it first of all because we were stagnant too, to get rid of some talent that I didn't need. Right. And that was as good a way as any. So the funny thing that happened at that period of time, and I don't know completely, what I say is my opinion was that all these guys' managers started bitching so much that nobody, Ted Turner and nobody with any authority ever signed off on the drug testing policy there, so it went down the tube. But you remember that Vince McMahon was under a big indictment by the federal government, and right. I thought from my understanding of it again, the guy that became the federal government's top witness against Vince was the guy he made the most money for, and he became the guy testifying against Vince. But anyway, to make a long story short, I understand that Vince was offered a settlement and didn't settle and fought the thing, and it cost him a lot of money. So he had a real tight organizational thing, and he really had legitimate testing, and they were clean, or else they had a 3-step program. And he really enforced it. But then I realized after I left there, I don't know what the timing was or anything else, but the few times you could switch through the show, it's not hard to spot the guys that are roided to the max.
Right.
And so when you said they're going to talk about it, I thought, what gee whiz, what's happened? I mean, is this just a showbiz talk, or I mean, are they really serious? Because I mean, it's also been my understanding that he's one of the biggest users.
Yeah, he's admitted to it, right?
So, I mean, is he all of a sudden had a epiphany that he's not going to take steroids himself? I mean, what's driving this? I shouldn't be so facetious because I don't know, but I mean, it's kind of funny to me that he's been doing it for years, and again, it's my understanding that he's one of the biggest abusers himself anyway, and maybe that's not even true. That's just what the scuttlebutt gets back to me.
Yeah. Do you think it would be good for the business if they did that?
Well, sure. Why the hell should you have a business that allows people to take something that can kill them. I mean, let's stop and think. Look at two of the five guys, or wait, one of the guys I'm going to mention now, I'm not going to mention him by name, he should have flunked our steroid test. As a matter of fact, that's when I told the people testing them, you need to watch the actual specimen come right from the source into the bottle. These guys will find a way to buy stuff and put in the bottle. But anyway, two of the guys are dead now that were positive.
Mm-hmm.
So without a doubt, you cannot deny that substance abuse, including steroids. See, they have never had anybody get out there and say that steroids are just as addictive and just as serious a problem as drugs.
Right.
But they are, because anything that alters your personality to that degree is a drug. It's addictive, and steroids are addictive. And you dealt with the guys with the roid rages and all the BS, and I mean, it was horrible. So yes, I would say that if you have a sport of any kind, whether it's manipulated or not, why would you want to have something that you're condoning people to take something that can kill them? And the next thing is, since you're in family time, do you think all these kids out there watching that show don't say, man, if I can get some of that juice, I want it?
Right.
That's the thing about the subtlety, as you said, of mindless entertainment. It's not mindless. They're teaching kids, if you want to be big and good, you better get on the juice. Because look at this, all the top guys are on the juice. And I'm not saying all of them are. I don't know who is and who isn't, but I'm just going to tell you, that's again, let's go back, and if you can come up with 10 things that you think pro wrestling really does, it's going to build up where your child is going to respect authority, respect you as his parent, respect God, respect the opposite sex, then you tell me what they are, because I don't see them there. I do not see them there. And this is one of the things you're talking about. How can you promote something that's against the law, something that in the Olympics, that in every other type of thing, they're trying to stop out, and then you've got one phase that's sitting there where the guys are on TV every week, and they're just proud as heck that, my gosh, I'm roided to the max. So I think you got my answer. No, I don't. I think it's very bad. Very, very, very bad.
Was it bad back in the 80s, you think, too? It's not just something recent.
Well, we didn't know much about it. We knew so little. I was always against it. I made my own children read some books, and the only book that I could find on it back then was a book by an amateur wrestler called Death in the Locker Room. And my kids had to read it and write a report on it. Now, in my naivety of being the stern parent, I'm sure they paid 100% attention to it. I even had a conversation with Snellenberger when Eric was at Louisville about the fact I didn't want him on steroids, and he got all offended by what I said, and I said, Howard, you're not dealing with I was born at night, it just wasn't last night. Do you want me to tell you not only who's on the roids on your team, do you want me to tell you which coach is supplying them? Or do you think you can handle this, and you can tell that dumbass, be sure he never gives my son any steroids, or I'm going to be over there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we can handle that, but again, we knew so little, and here's another thing about drugs that we knew so little about. We thought in our minds that we could appeal to the logic of somebody on drugs and would help them. You can't, because a person on drugs, until they admit they're on them and make up their mind that they want to do something about it, you're talking to the drug. You're not even talking to the person. And everybody's in denial. All these guys that you see dying, and how many have died? Ted DiBiase told me over 40 guys have died since he retired the first time.
Right.
And every single one of those things has had somewhere in it where you would think maybe there's some substance abuse.
Yeah.
Well, if that many guys have died early, and every one of them, and I remember at that fan deal that we're talking about in Tampa, I visited with Mike Graham, and Mike Graham was sharing with me how many guys that he tried to help, tried to talk them out of taking the crap, and even said, I would get you in rehab, and we'll put you in there for some other reason, and so you're not going to lose your pay or anything else. And the guy'd look at him like, are you crazy? I don't have a problem. I can handle this. So, it's killing people. How could you then say, well, I'm for it, because I think it's more important they be big than be dead.
No, I agree totally.
I mean, again, you guys got to also realize where I am. I'm at this point in my life. You see, there was a time in society when what the old farts like me had to say had value because we had been around and we'd seen life. Then we reached a time in society when it was just old people and all the young people were so much sharper. And without a doubt, they are so much sharper in many ways, but that still doesn't mean there's not great value in learning history. I mean, you know, our history today that's taught in the schools and stuff is so incomplete that makes it so easy to pull the wool over people's eyes when they really don't know what's happened before, because it's like even the Bible. In the Bible, God says, I've written this for your instruction. In other words, this is for instruction, so you'll know how to live your life. See, in school, they teach you how to make a living. They don't teach you how to live your life. The Bible tells you how to live your life.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Just say someone here in our chat room wanted to ask you if you've been approached about being in the WWE Hall of Fame.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I haven't heard from Vince in a long time. So I haven't been approached.
How about the rights to like the MidSouth footage? Does WWE own that?
I don't know who owns it. My family took that from me in a lawsuit, and the last I heard about it, my ex-wife and my children were running that, and I don't know anything about it. Don't ask about it.
Okay.
Kind of like it's like when they take part of what you created.
Right.
You know, you just kind of takes the desire out of you to know much about it. So I don't know who owns what on that, and whatever they own, bless them. I hope they do well with it, and that's wonderful. And it's just one of those horrible products of divorce, which divorce is probably one of the things that is the most damaging to the fabric of our society and our nation. It's what's happened to the fabric of our families.
We have another caller here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Who's on the line?
The phenomenal one, CJ Styles.
Hi, do you have a question for Bill Watts?
Yes. In your time in WCW, what was that like?
I couldn't hear him.
I just want to know about your time in WCW.
What about it?
What was most memorable for you there?
I couldn't.
I think he probably wants to know, did things change a lot from the time you were like in UWF, Mid-South, to when you went to WCW?
You mean as far as the business?
Yeah.
Well, no, the business is about the same. I mean, I wasn't out of touch with the business. The business had changed, and I got a kick out of Sting. He said, Cowboy, the business has changed. I said, yeah. When it used to be a time that you had to earn what you were getting paid. You guys get paid whether you earn it or not.
Right.
The reason I was brought there was because it was out of control. They were losing $8 million a year, and asked me if I could bring it in less. And in 11 months, I brought it in under $400,000 loss. So I cut the loss from over $8 million to under $400,000, and yet I couldn't get even a letter of commendation from the guy I reported to in Turner Broadcasting. And if you recall, I think after that, the guy that ran it after I left, his claim to fame is he wrecked it forever, and it's no longer there. And I think somebody told me they lost $80 million. So, when people are telling me how great Bischoff is, I wonder what kind of Kool-Aid they've been drinking to think that. I mean, the first movie made after I was gone was Fire Jim Ross, who was the sharpest guy on staff there. Mm-hmm. And Jim Ross's history, Vince saw his talent, and that history has been proven. So, again, you see, I was brought there, and one of the things they asked me says, can you fire Dusty Rhodes? I said, sure, I can fire Dusty Rhodes. Good gosh, I'm not like Jim Crockett. I can book. I can do it all, so I don't have to have Dusty. I'm not crippled where I need Dusty. But I said, I'm going to tell you this, that Dusty Rhodes is a fantastic piece of talent. So before I fire him, I want to walk in and ask him and tell him I'm there and tell him what the deal is and say, do you want to work with me or do you want to go ahead and do what I'm supposed to do? And I walked in, and, man, he saw me, we hugged and talked. He said, let's just get it on. And he joined the team. Whereas the difference in me and, say, for instance, a Bischoff was he would much rather fire Jim Ross to prove he was now boss than to have somebody that talented he could benefit from working for him. But the bottom line is Bischoff's lasting legacy will be he did something nobody else could do, including Vince. He wrecked wrestling at Turner Broadcasting. What a legacy. What a legacy. I mean, here's a guy that was not even a good booth announcer, and got into the power, and the power went through his head, and Turner Broadcasting is no longer as far as wrestling.
I also want to tell everybody that the Cowboy and the Cross Bill Watts story is available at cowboybillwatts.com, or more information at cowboybillwatts.com. It's available at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and crowbarpress.com. Is there anything you want to tell your fans out there before we let you go?
No, I've enjoyed it. I hope that it's been good for you. And, again, I appreciate you plugging my website. My website's a lot about my life and my faith. And, again, the bottom line is I'm not trying to sell religion, because my situation is not about religion. It's about my relationship with God through Jesus Christ, and I think it's a special thing. And, certainly it's not for everybody, and it's not up to me to convince anybody. But people that are seeking for more out of life than what they're getting, maybe my website will help them. And so the www.cowboybillwatts.com, and at least there you can maintain being in touch with me if they want to in some form or fashion. And I appreciate everybody having me on, and you guys being very patient with me, and you let me answer the questions the way that I wanted to answer them. And you guys, it's been a very pleasant experience for me. Thanks a lot.
Oh, we really appreciate you coming on.
We absolutely did.
This is Loverboy Dennis of the Midnight Express. You need to get on the inyourheadonline.com. It's great. I just got through doing a little interview with them. These are great guys here. Jump on there and see what they're up to.